All right, you tell me where to go.
Go to hell, I say. Okay, so we're going to go to Pasadena.
Okay.
Cool. It holds it down. Wow.
Yeah, and
High
it wasn't
tech.
shaking too much.
Yeah, no, the image was clear.
That's partly why.
Pay attention to the road. 'Cause now I'm already fucking nervous, and I'm the one that's driving around on the motorbike.
and I'm used to driving on this side of the road. Okay, which way?
Left.
Okay.
And then left again.
Okay. I think left. I've got to go to the far side of the road.
Man, you're scaring me already.
Okay.
Now I'm worrying. Does he understand the distances on that side now? Are we?
No,
is he
I
gonna
don't.
Be scraping by cars.
It's that side
constantly?
which is the actual.
Yeah.
Oh, it's left again.
Yeah. Left is on that side. Right is on this side. So I'm to your right.
you just say
you know.
Your side or my side.
Yeah. Turn your side? No, turn my side. All right.
Okay, so I'm here in Los Angeles with Max Presneill, straight on.
A scared Max Presneill.
And last time we caught up was in Brisbane in May, and we did an interview then which was generally about kind of networking and that kind of thing. And in fact, there was a bit of a networking event in and of itself because you had your opening, left or right?
Yep, left and then first right.
Okay, left, far side of the road.
Left. I'll have to write it on your feet. Turn right.
Okay, so what I wanted to ask this time, Max, was more about left or right?
Straight.
Straight.
No, straight.
Okay, straight. Was more about what does that actually mean? You know, if you are, you know, starting out, you're an emerging artist or you're in art school, you know, what actually is networking? Because it sounds all very actually, it used to be one of those things when I was an art student, you know, the odd lecturer would say networking blah blah blah, and it used to make my skin crawl a bit because it sounded a little bit too sort of schmoozy, you know, but it's essential, is it not?
Okay, so there's a couple of things. First of all is, yes, it's the same thing as schmoozing, but we need to dispel the myth of schmoozing being a bad thing.
Yeah.
And as we've talked about before, is schmoozing is the word that we use to describe other people actually listening and having an interest in anything you have to say because you're boring.
Yeah.
And the reality is we're all a bit introverted in what we do, and then we justify it in terms of a bigger discourse, which is more socially related in some ways, and a language and blah blah blah. But we are I mean, it's all very much for the romanticism of the average person out there thinking, oh, artists, that must be great, how romantic. The reality is, as soon as you start saying, well, I'm investigating the dichotomy between, eyes glaze over, people don't give a fuck, and you've just become the most boring person in the room.
Yeah.
You know, if one stops looking at it as schmoozing because somehow you're being kind of creepy and you know, this kind of falseness to it. If you think of schmoozing in terms of hanging around with a bunch of people who are actually interested in the same things as you, and who are interested in you and what you do, as you are probably or should be interested in what they do, because it'll inform your practice and it'll, you know, it'll learn you a bit. Then it's no longer a negative. It's like a really good social positive, and nobody likes a creep. So there's no need to be that creep. Schmoozing doesn't need to be kind of, you know, that kind of arse-licky kind of thing. Doesn't need to be that. But it's good if it's friendly and easygoing and relaxed and having some fun and telling some jokes, but listening to what people have to say when it comes to what they do. I take an interest.
The hardest thing that I mean, and I still find this hard because on the MBTI scale, you know, on the MBTI, I'm actually an introvert.
Okay.
And so I find the
you
whole
do a really good impression of somebody who isn't.
I know.
Very impressive.
So I find the whole initiating, you know, a contact with someone, I find that difficult. So if you're an opening, but I've noticed that you seem to break that barrier really quickly.
you know, I am definitely an extrovert, although everybody that's an extrovert too also thinks that they're an introvert. Everybody does.
Right, yeah.
Well, everybody's like, oh yeah, but I feel insecure at just talking to people.
Yeah.
But you kind of get over it. The other thing is that I think it becomes, you're going to turn right up here where that car's going. I think it becomes really easier when you know that you've got something worth saying as much as anybody else, and that you're interested in hearing, listening to. Yeah, just carry on.
Okay.
So you've got, you know, you're interested in listening and hearing what somebody has to say.
Yeah.
So you don't, like Lelania does that. She actually is really interested in listening.
Yeah.
So she's good because people want to, you know, they'll talk and she's like, oh, and she gets into the so if you're not comfortable talking, then listen. And then they'll ask you, and then you feel comfortable because you've been talking to them for a while, and you know, you might feel a bit more comfortable in saying, well, that's what I do.
Well, I think that one of the important things, and this is only something I've learned fairly recently, is like the idea of kind of actively listening, which is, you know, I think a lot of people sort of listen to respond.
Yeah.
You know, and yet if you actively listen, you know, you ask those kind of interrogative sort of questions when you're talking to someone.
Yeah.
You know, people are really happy to kind of keep going. You know.
Well, I think it's what you need. I would hope that anybody that's like involved in art would understand that the best strength that you have is a real ability to learn.
Yeah.
And that ability to learn is to read a lot and to listen a lot, and you know, and to talk a lot, because you can expand your ideas through, you know, explanation. You know, once you start having to verbalize and articulate, it makes things clearer.
Yeah.
But you also need to look and listen, and you know, and make sure you're not only seeing a lot, but sifting the good from the bad.
Yeah.
And you know, and the best way of doing that is to see and hear a lot.
Yeah. What do you I know this sounds real nuts and bolts kind of stuff, but what do you actually like? What is the initiating sort of things that you actually ask people?
It depends on the situation. It's completely context driven.
Yeah.
If I'm in a studio visit, I essentially say, tell me what you think it's about.
Yeah.
And I say, tell me what you think it's about rather than tell me what it is about.
Yeah.
Because it's not always the case that people either know what it's about really, or are very accurate with it, or they can often lie because they don't want to really tell you what it's about because they might be embarrassed or whatever. And some people just don't know. They just make stuff and don't really know what it's about anyway.
Yeah.
And they miss all the implications of it. So my question is always, you know, tell me what you think it's about, and then we'll have a discussion.
Yeah.
And then we'll find out from there.
So, on a, you know, I mean, that's just like openings and things like that. So, what are the much more kind of structured, sort of practical things that people can do to actually build networks?
So here we are, crux of the matter stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're a younger artist, emerging, you know, student, or you know, out of school recently, the biggest mistake is thinking I should just make work and somehow something's going to happen. People somehow can discover it.
Yeah.
Even if you're getting shows and relying on just, you know, this is going to do everything.
Yeah.
It isn't for the vast majority. And so I think the best thing you can do for your career, make good work, you know, read, write as much as possible so you're really understanding it, but understand that a good proportion of what you have to do as a professional is that networking. And the best way of doing that is to the real punk aesthetic of it is do it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and if you get together with a group of people and start doing it yourself, everyone else notices, your peers notice, and everybody else that's up that ladder, as it were, they also notice. Because they know that the smart cookies, the ones that are going to be driven, the ones that are going to be, you know, seeing things realistically, who will be easier to work with because they understand the nuts and bolts of everything, are those people. And so they step, and they're taken seriously. You know, somebody's like, I'm an artist. Yeah, you just came out of school. Good. You know, it takes a few years to do, you know, to really even to start making serious art. Anyway, I think. But say, well, okay, you're at that stage. Great, well done. But you do need to. Well,
there's a turntable in the middle of the road.
Start DJing. Anyway. Yeah. What you gonna play us? That's weird, isn't it? A record deck in the middle of the fucking freeway. Anyway, and something else as well. I don't know what they keep driving over, but we're going to get the left lanes, by the way.
Okay.
As soon as we jet ahead of everyone else, because you're in a fast car.
Okay.
And it's a fast car because it's a convertible. Anyway, so the most useful thing you can do is help yourself, and I think the way to do that is to look at the things that are the real things of value to you, which are things like, getting to know as many people as possible, getting as many people as possible to know who you are, so that curators think of you when they're putting together shows, and gallerists think of you when they're going to make a group show, or they respect you enough that they're willing to do a studio visit even though you're not there yet. And that's got to do with reputation and visibility. And also it helps. How do you establish yourself as the foremost of your peers? Because you need to be ahead of the crowd, as it were, because that places you in the position where people who are looking to the leadership, who's talking about who, and that kind of thing. Well, that becomes you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing there.
Left tip.
Yeah. I think the ways to do that, the most efficient way to do that, I believe, is to open your own alternative space. Get together with some friends, so you share the work and the sitting and the costs.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a great place. It doesn't have to be very big, because what counts is you do the shows and that they get on the internet and you spread them around the internet worldwide if you're smart. And you could do it. There could be one night only, once a month, and it really doesn't matter. It matters that you document. Vargos. Yeah, another club. They don't know that they just passed by one of the chosen few, but in a car, so I don't count.
Yeah. You're a nobody at the moment.
That's right, I'm a nobody. I'm in a car. So they need to look at what those the long-term objectives are, and the long-term objectives isn't the exhibition. The exhibition is great because it teaches you things like how to install, how to organise an opening, how to do some publicity, how to contact artists, all that kind of stuff. Great experience, makes you more professional, which will impress people along the line there, the other professionals.
Yeah.
But if you really understand what you're aiming at, which is spreading reputation and people and the knowledge of what you do.
Yeah.
And if you're with a group of people that are doing these really good exhibitions, you kind of push out into the world. You send stuff out to people. You send invitations, and you send them globally. You find out all the other groups that are like yours around the world, and you send them stuff so they know what you're doing. And you can start that establish exchanges really easily, because everybody wants to exchange. So if you've got space and you can make that contact with somebody in New York and somebody in London and somebody in Tokyo, who wouldn't want to do an exchange? Because they want to show where you are.
Yeah.
So and you want to show where they are. So that setting it up's easy. We can talk later about how you actually do that to keep it going, because it's actually quite simple. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It just takes the work to do it. But what that group in itself can establish a kind of place in the art scene much faster than you as an individual, because you're not asking for anything. You're just giving. Yeah, and don't worry about sales. Don't worry about anything else. It isn't about that. Don't invite your friends and family, but whether they turn up is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
And you want to get some of those art world professionals to come, particularly other artists, critics, gallerists, and whatever. If they don't, but you're doing a good job of sending the information out, you're covering bases, so you're getting that done. But remember what the aims are, because people go, "Oh, it was a terrible turnout." It doesn't matter. Oh, but the show only lasted 2 nights. It doesn't matter. The fact is, it's now on the internet with the names of the people that did it, and some images, and that's all that counts when you're building this. And the other things I think are really important about doing these group things is it's really easy to get famous artists to do them. Way easier than people expect. And so if you've got a good idea and it's a good theme and it fits the artist you're going to approach, and they're surprisingly easy to approach. I mean, find an email or whatever, or if they're really big and they're a bit private, go through their gallery. We've got this show. We really like you. Your work's really. Here's what it's about. We really love it. We'll come and pick it up.
Yeah.
We'll make sure everything's good. Blah blah blah. And most of the time they're pretty good about it, and often because it makes them feel like they're relevant to a younger audience.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and so what happens at the end of that is you have on the internet that you've gone and told everybody about, and you've referred to your website. You've got a show, and it's you and your friends that are in the group, and 2, 3, 4 of these really famous artists. It's like, and everyone around the world, out there thinks, oh, they show with them. Well, that validates. They must be really good. They must be up and coming. They must be, because they're in that show with it. Yeah. Because that's how it works. I mean, we did the same when I was younger, and I you take part in younger artist shows if they invite you, and people are generally pretty good, but it does that favour of by association, because now, like, who isn't impressed when you say, oh, I'm in a show with Gerhard Richter. I was in a show last year with. Earlier this year with Gerhard Richter. Right. I fucking told everyone. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm in a show with Gerhard Richter. I'm impressed with that.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
It's a small show, and I never met him, and he's probably never heard of me. Doesn't matter. I was in a show with Gerhard Richter. Yeah. And I think that's the kind of way you can build these things. And like I say, it doesn't matter whether it's a big, wonderful space, as long as you keep it clean. And it can be tiny. Yeah. What's your budget? And
temporary as well.
And temporary. Yeah. I mean, what's your budget? You can even do pop-ups. I mean, pop-ups are great. The only trouble with pop-ups is this is a long-term investment. You need to be like constantly doing these things with the same name, which is good for if you have a place, because that's where the place is. That's where whatever your name is for your group. And that's really good, because you can then it builds over time. Oh, those, I've heard of those. Oh, I'm going to go to the next show because I've heard of them. Yeah. So you go and it spreads, and you can kind of look at that and say, wow, they've got a good program. They're doing these great shows. Maybe I'll be involved, or I'm going to go. Or if you're a better known artist, well, I'd be happy if they asked me to take part. That kind of thing. So it's kind of better to have a permanent space. But like I said, it doesn't have to be very big. It's just do good shows and spread the reputation through that. Take the time and effort to make sure that you are actively trying to invite the people that you want there. I mean, not just sending them a general email, like send them a personalised email. If there's any chance of going and visiting them, go and visit and ask them to come. Yeah. A really great way of getting to know a lot of these artists is to contact them and ask for studio visits. So you can see what's on the inside, ask questions so you know more about their work, more about the artwork, see what they have to say. And then once you've had that experience with them, they're normally pretty good. You can contact them in the future. Would you, we're going to do the show. Do you want to take part? And you've established a relationship with them. Yeah. And that makes life a whole lot easier. And you get to visit their studio and get to know them a bit, and who knows what will come out of that.
Well, one thing I've noticed doing this project, StudioCrasher, is that it's a snowball effect as well. Yeah. I mean, everyone I've interviewed is from a very small kind of, starting point. Yeah. And it's just, you might want to talk to, you should talk to them. Oh, they would love to do it.
One of the things that also work for younger artists, if you start your own space or your own group, there's hundreds and hundreds of other people doing this out in the world, and they all love networking with each other, because it's us versus the world kind of thing, and that gives you an opportunity to place yourself everywhere and meet people who are like you. Similar enough that you're probably going to get on, and it's really great, because I've go to Berlin and do a show with a group like Durden and Ray, and this is great, fantastic. Now you can come up here and do a show, and what about working on some bigger projects, and that's you get invited, and the more you get invited, the more you're present and your names are bandied around, and then you become people like the movers and shakers, and the movers and the shakers, the ones that do stuff. If you're sitting there waiting around, well, I'm this wonderful painter, but I'm just waiting to be discovered. Good luck. Yeah. Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, I think a lot of artists leaving art school kind of think that it's just a matter of then securing a commercial gallery,
as if that's going to solve all their problems. And it really doesn't. All it does is give them a show once every 2 or 3 years. And hope that you're going to build an audience that's going to buy your work.
That normally doesn't sell anyway. The first show.
First shows rarely do. So I mean, that's a fool's errand. You build your reputation so the galleries come to you. And start asking you if you'd be interested. I mean, that's the kind of way round that one should do it. Yeah. And really try and get to that point where people are paying attention. And that, but there's so many this, most people kind of wait for something to happen to them. It's stupid.
Yeah.
But particularly if you're not in the major art centres, if you're not in New York, London, LA, Berlin, maybe Tokyo, it's still quite small, but say Tokyo, and for Australia, say Sydney, and maybe Melbourne. But if you're not in these centres, and remember, like even Sydney and Melbourne are tiny compared to everywhere else in the art scene. But if you're not even in those cities, you really need to work extra hard in getting out into the world.
Yeah.
You can't afford to wait there.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen in this little town or that little city. So how do you go about making sure that you're establishing long-term connections and relationships with New York and with LA or wherever it might be? And the easiest way is to have a group that can find ways to interact and do these exchanges together. And if you, there's some really easy like ground rules to make that happen, which is, you do it by email anyway, introductions, and check each other's websites out, and you like the artists enough to say, yeah, this would work. And my advice would be each group handles all of its own shipping. That way, what you send is as ambitious as you are, as opposed to waiting for them to say, well, we've only got a small budget. I don't care how big your budget is. If I really want that show and I want some people in front of it, I'm going to send the work that I need to be seen there. And if I have to find grants, or if I have to pay for it myself, or if I have to fly it out there, that's my decision. It's my ambition. So in those groups, it's really good to be self-sufficient in your own interests rather than theirs, because they're like, oh, let's just have small. No, I'm going to take a big pack, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I think the temptation is to do that because it's going to be cheap, and
and what you should never sacrifice impact for, well, it'd be cheaper to send it. It would be, but you've got an opportunity here. These opportunities don't come along every day. Make the most of it, because if you show 10 times a year, you're doing good. But 10 times in a year, out 365 days, you've got 10 opportunities to really like bang out and something. Yeah. Cause a bit of a response. Take advantage of them. Don't fuck around and hope that I've got another one. Yeah, they're going to get harder. You've got certain leeway when you're new to the scene. You've got certain leeway when you're a student, ex-student. That disappears quickly. After a while, it's you don't get special privilege of like messing up and whatever. That's going to disappear. So get onto it now. Make it happen. Make sure that you're. I would expect anybody that's going to be ambitious and that's driven to be able to sit in a conversation and say, if we talk about Paris, and you say, oh, Glassbox, you should know Glassbox. If you want to know what's going on in Paris, you should know that. Whatever. And it's the same for everywhere. Which post in LA for the older like alternative spaces. What about the new ones? What about this one? You should know these things. What about the pit? And you learn these things. You find out, Ito Aiko in Tokyo, and Mop from back in the days in Sydney, and then Chalk Horse or whatever. All these things you need to know about. Yeah. Even if you've never been there and you're unlikely to ever go, you should know. Because those are the groups that you need to exchange with, and you want to get the best ones you can. So you look for the reputation. Who are the biggest, best, the most driven, with the best artists, with most ambition? Exchange with them, because they're already networking. They're already getting collectors and gallerists coming to their spaces, and critics and reviews and whatever. And so if you manage to do that exchange, you've got those people coming to see your show. So take advantage of. And of course the reverse is, when they come to you, you work really hard to get them reviews. Not because you're sitting there saying, well, it's not my show. It's if you're getting that, first of all, it bucks the reputation because that space is getting a review, and it establishes those people going back to whatever country they come from saying, I had a great experience and we got a review and this space is really moved, they're doing stuff, so we should work with them more, and they'll tell other people, and those other people say, oh, we should pay attention to that.
In terms of getting a review, is it important that, of course everyone wants a review in art form, but it's not going to happen for a group of students starting out, but in terms of a review, is it better to get something in anything?
It's better to have something in anything, but I don't actually think reviews are particularly important. No. I think this is a much more widespread, subtle, insidious kind of impact you're trying to make. You're trying to get the tendrils of knowledge worldwide.
Yeah.
And to do that, that means what really counts is the people that came from whatever country, when they came over, had a good time, they're going back and telling people about it.
Yeah.
When you're having the show there, you spend time and effort contacting, like, if we're going to do a show in Berlin. So I would start doing research about what the good young space is in Berlin, what the commercial galleries that I really like the look of. I would be contacting all of them, saying, I'm going to be in the show there. You know, it'd be really great if you could just pop in to see it. No pressure. Always try and put no pressure. But, you know, give them a little bit of information, some images, and put that out there. I would be finding out who's writing for what there, who's the magazines there. Contact them, say, you should, you know, if you can get there, please come by. If you can go out, even better, because then you make a personal connection. But, you know, realise that the longer term goal here is all these people who are at least your peer group, who will become the next. A lot of those people will be the people that are the big names in 5 years.
Yeah.
And you want to have those relationships with them in 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, you start now. When everybody's like, hey, we're all fresh and we can help each other out. So that 5 years from now, you can go to that person and say, you know, hey Bob, you know, you're with, you're with Pace Gallery. Can you ask the gallery to have a look at my work? It doesn't matter if they take it, but just ask them to have a look. And if you've known them for 5 years and you've done stuff since you were unknowns, they'll do it.
This makes me think there's a sociologist whose name I can never remember, who talks about the idea of weak links. And weak ties, I think it is, and it's this idea that meaningful kind of connections and collaborations happen as a result of the multiple weak ties that people put out. So that what that means practically is that, you know, and I try and do this myself. One of the reasons I travel so much is that I try and just kind of establish as many kind of, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that if I meet someone, we're going to be working together on something in the next 2 years. Could
be years and years down the line.
But it means that you forge those, you know, you make these connections just even, you know, on a Facebook.
No, so it even comes down to, say, you're in, New York, and you're chatting to somebody, and they say, well, I did this show at, and you say, oh, do you know, Sheila? Yeah. And yeah. That changes the dynamic immediately.
Yeah, it does,
that means that you go, oh yeah, that was great. I had a really great show. Hey, yeah, we should go for a drink. Everything changes with that, which means you've now moved into a deeper. It's not a huge relationship yet, but it's one where there's a little bit more mutual trust. There's certainly a little bit more mutual respect because, if you know them and work with them, then you must be somebody to be taken seriously. And a lot of that is that kind of feeling each other out stuff. And those kind of some of the signals that people use to say, a serious person, it's somebody that's genuinely out there doing some serious stuff without even seeing your work. It doesn't matter. If you're working with this gallery, you're working with that curator, that critic has reviewed you're friends with these people, then okay, I know who they are. And if we've got mutual friends, then we are people that probably have things in common, and we're going to get on here to some degree.
It's an endorsement, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
of
kind
course.
Of like a reference.
Yeah, it's
an
like
informal reference.
Yeah, and I think those things are really, really important. Because people do make judgments from those things, and they make important judgments from them. I was in a conversation with two artists yesterday, informal kind of meeting, and we were talking about some other artists who are quite well known, and we're mutual friends. Oh well, how are they? Haven't seen them for a while, blah blah blah. And it does it kind of cements those kind of things a little bit more, and long term, those are the people who you will be working with, or will be giving you references to somebody else to work with. And if it's going to be like, even up to the Documenta and Venice Biennale, it still works that way. Somebody and people phone each other and say, I was going to work with such and such. What do you think? Do you know them? Yeah. Oh no, they're a dick. Yeah. Oh well, that's that then. Yeah. But it does matter, and you can form those right from the beginning. Like some of my closest friends, like Ichiro's got a show at the Japanese American Museum open today. They were formed because we were all unknown. We didn't know, nobody knew who the hell we were, but we were all hanging around, seeing each other's works, going to each other's openings, supporting each other, and everything kind of rises up. And over a certain amount of time, then they get to know a bunch of people, see you're at a party, and they introduce you and say, oh, this is Ed Richet. Oh, nice to meet you. Or whoever, Mark Bradford, whatever. And you do the same thing, because now you know some people, and then those people see you as being part of this. And it all just kind of goes like this, together. It's a long-range strategy, and and one needs to be aware of the difference between strategy and tactics.
Yeah.
And understand that you're looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And to get to the bigger picture, success is strategic rather than the little tactical aspects of going to openings.
I was going to say, so what we were talking about initially, that's the tactical part of it. That's the individual kind of.
Yeah, the little things you do to get the strategy right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but you have to understand that the strategy is long term. If you're smart, it's global. It's not local.
Yeah.
And understanding that it's not that it's super hard, but you have to get over a lot of your own prejudices. Oh, it's schmoozing. I hate schmoozing. You're not schmoozing. You're talking to somebody who's got similar interests. I'll sit there and talk to somebody that talk about Arsenal for hours.
Yeah.
Because we're interested in the same thing. Why would I turn around and say, schmoozing?
I'm schmoozing
with this guy because he supports the same team as me. I mean, it's stupid. I mean, and these are things that you need to be doing because it extends your network, and that network is how you get things.
Yeah.
And it's how you get referred. And people saying, like, coming up and saying, oh, I'm going to do this show. I'm curating a show of figurative work. And of course, first thing comes to mind is, what's his name does that, or she's doing a great new series of works like that. The reason why you recommend them is, one is that they make good work, but how do we know they make good work? It's because they network well and they keep you informed about what they do, and you go and you like them, so you go to their openings, so you see what they're doing. You do studio visits, artists exchanging studio visits, and spend a little bit of social time, and they're the first people that pop up in your head, and they're the people you pass along, and somebody else will go, I'll check those out. Maybe put them in something, and I've got loads of shows on my resume that happen that way. From all over the place. Yeah. And, you just have to recognise that this isn't an extra. This is the core. Yeah. The core, the absolute core is make the work. And I'm trying to, teach yourself to educate yourself about your own work. But the other side is this. This is how the business works. And if you want to be involved in it outside of, you're, lonely garret somewhere, drinking cheap wine and killing yourself slowly because nobody's looking at your artwork. That can happen if you don't do this other side, because this other side is absolutely necessary. You get to drive this car, you have to put gas in it, and you have to learn how to drive. There's all these other aspects that are necessary in achieving this. Yeah, especially a convertible.
Well, hey.
Flash kit. There's no ways around this. So very occasionally somebody's lucky and they get picked up really easily for whatever happened, but it's a couple of people you'll ever meet in your lifetime of getting around the world who that ever happened to. Yeah. And the other 98% of people who actually have careers, and remembering that the 98% of the people that have careers are about 1% of all the other people making art. If you want to get into that little tiny percentage, then you got to be smart about it. It's like, well, I can play football, but I don't go up to the Emirates Stadium and say, "Hello, Arsene Wenger, can you just give me a game, because I fancy it." Yeah. You have to.
I'm good.
I'm really good, but there's all this other stuff that goes into it, and it's the same for anything else. I mean, you have to go through all this process of getting your name and face and your personality out there. Because if you're an arsehole, and there are people like that occasionally, right at the beginning, people don't want to work with them. No. And they'll spread it. They'll make sure other people know it and forewarn them. Yeah. Most people really know it. I mean, as a general rule, people are kind of okay and cool, and you have a chat, and all right, you'd like some people more than others, but as long as you can be relied upon, turn up in time, don't go around dissing the people you're working with too much, especially if it's unrealistic, it's all personal. Don't get involved in the stupid little games and stuff, and then you might be okay. Yeah. As long as you make good artwork in general.
That's true. That's the
crux of the matter.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Make some art. Should we go and grab some?
Yeah. Thanks, Max.
We'll continue on the way home.